Hey, my cherry pots. Welcome back to another episode of Pots of Stories. The Nonprofit Man, episode 18 now. If you've been following my story with John, you already know this man has surprised me more than once. But on our first night in South Africa, I discovered something about him that completely changed the way I saw him. Let me take you back. John and I had just arrived at this beautiful hotel. Everything was luxurious, and I was still taking in the fact that I was finally in Africa with this man. Then, while we were checking in, John's phone rang. He looked at the screen, answered, and said, "I don't want to talk to you about this now." My cherry pots? Of course I noticed. I wanted to know who was calling. But John ended the conversation and didn't explain. We continued with the check-in, and then I discovered something else. John had arranged for us to have separate suites. I had my own presidential suite, and he had his own suite. And honestly, I appreciated that. There was no pressure, no rushing. We could take our time and enjoy the trip. Later that evening, John and I were sitting together in his suite. He told me that because it was our first night in Africa, he didn't want to rush anything. He wanted me to take my time, and he wanted to enjoy my company. I thought that was sweet, but then his mood changed. He told me there were some things he needed to explain, and I knew immediately it was about that phone call. John finally told me that the people who had called him were his daughter-in-law, and his son. My cherry pots, I was confused. Why would his entire family be calling him while he was in South Africa? Then he told me they knew he had come to South Africa to meet a woman, me. And apparently, they were very interested in knowing who I was. Now, remember, John had always told me that he worked for a nonprofit organization. That was the man I thought I knew, a man who traveled around the world helping people through his work. But then John told me something I never expected. He said he wasn't simply someone who worked for the nonprofit. He told me, I am the nonprofit. My cherry pots. I was stunned. He explained that the companies supporting the organization's work were actually his companies. Then he told me he owned 8 businesses around the world. 8! And these weren't small businesses. They were major international companies. Then came the part that completely changed everything. John told me he was a billionaire. Yes, my cherry pots. A billionaire. He said he was worth billions of US dollars. Imagine sitting across from someone you've been getting to know, thinking you understand who they are, and then discovering they have been hiding an entire empire from you. I honestly didn't know what to say, because suddenly, so many things about John started making sense. And then he explained why he had never told me. He said he didn't want money to influence the way I felt about him. He didn't want me searching for his companies or going online trying to find out how much he was worth. He wanted me to get to know him as a man, not as a billionaire. And my cherry pots? That made me think. Because now I understood the phone call. His children knew exactly who their father was. They knew how wealthy he was. They knew he had traveled all the way to South Africa to meet me. And naturally, they wanted answers. But while John was explaining all of this, one question kept going through my mind. Who exactly is this man? I had come to South Africa believing I was getting to know a man who worked for a nonprofit. Now, I was sitting across from a billionaire who owned 8 businesses around the world. And he didn't want me to look him up. He wanted me to forget the money, forget the companies, and simply get to know him. But my cherry pots. If John could keep something this enormous from me, what else had he not told me? Because one thing was becoming very clear. I hadn't just met a wealthy man. I had walked into a story much bigger than I ever imagined. And something told me that this billionaire was carrying secrets that I hadn't even begun to uncover. Watch out for episode 19.